Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's NewsNow podcast. I'd like to welcome Dr. Gary Benson, retired from the ranks of West Lincoln Memorial Hospital about 2 years ago now.
About 2.5 years now. Yeah.
But maybe you could just give a little bit of background on yourself and your history as it relates to West Lincoln.
Yep. So, Mike, I first came to Grimsby in 1971. Practiced for close to 50 years, I guess now, in both family medicine and anesthesia. In more recent years, starting in about 2008, I took on a more active role administrative-wise at West Lincoln, initially as the Chief of Staff, which I did for about 7 years, and then when we amalgamated with Hamilton Health Sciences, I became the Medical Director. So I've had a long history with West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, very passionate about the hospital.
You've seen a lot of change and a lot of not change in some ways, right? In terms of the elastics and Band-Aids holding the place together over the years.
Not much changed over the initial, I guess, 25 years or so. And then once we got into the latter part of the 1990s, then we started looking at rebuilding and making all those changes that have been such a prominent part since then. So,
yeah. And equipment and technology changes as well.
Absolutely.
The new CAT scan was unveiled last Thursday.
Yeah,
we will chat about that.
Really impressive.
I just wanted to start with the One Team, One Dream magazine that we put together here in the office last week, and should be arriving back in town tomorrow. I'm looking forward to seeing that in a printed version after staring at a computer for weeks on it. Yeah. But you submitted a nice piece on that with a retrospective of really just spanning your years and your experience with the place. What would you consider maybe one of the highlights or the things that you liked? I'm sure everybody's loving to see the build finally proceeding. Yep. It's probably number one in everybody's hearts. But over your tenure, there was I'm sure a lot of ups and downs. But what would you say was some of the key points on the positive side?
Yeah. So one of the first things that I recall, and I mentioned that in the article that I wrote, was the event that happened back in 1996-97, when under the provincial government at the time, conservative government with Premier Mike Harris, started a major austerity program and started cutting in a lot of areas, including in healthcare. And one of the areas that they decided to cut was to eliminate a lot of the community hospitals throughout Ontario. So that caused a lot of concern here in West Niagara, West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. And so one of the first things that I recall, or one of the highlights that I recall, is the evening of, I think it was February the 7th, 1997, when in response to the threat to close West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, a rally was held at the high school here in Grimsby, attended by, I think, several thousand people actually. And I remember standing there and looking around.
Were you inside? Were you in the gym?
Or I was outside in the field.
Yeah,
outside in the field.
I was on the roof of GSS.
I think I saw you there.
It was cold.
Yeah, it was cold. But looking around at all these people who were so passionate and thinking, wow, this is just an incredible community.
Yeah.
I can't believe people came out in the middle of the winter, a cold winter night, to show their support. It was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was a public meeting going on inside the gym, and I think they limited the capacity to 700 in the gym, and it was every bit of that. People all the way down the halls, all the way out the door, all the way out the front door, around the side of the parking, and halfway down the football field. Man, it was really, something.
Really impressive, yeah. So that was the start of the, in my mind anyway, the campaign to seriously get our hospital.
Well, it certainly showed the government, the community was taking it very seriously.
Absolutely. And I think the part the community played was huge. And most people may not even realize that, but it did make a major impact on the government at the time.
I believe so. I think, wasn't the Niagara-on-the-Lake facility in the same group, and I think they had a similar event and only had a few hundred.
Yeah, maybe
in a smaller community in
yeah,
that.
absolutely, yeah.
But other communities across the province that were involved in that had like Grimsby had hit a nerve, and
Yeah,
people were gonna
yeah.
jump up.
And I mentioned as well, I think in the article that I wrote, one incident that happened at the time. People were encouraged to write letters to the ministry, to the government, but also to Duncan Sinclair, who headed up the commission, the restructuring commission, and it was that group was to decide which hospitals were spared and which ones weren't. And at the time, our local internist, Dr. Jonathan Ginsberg, took it upon himself to get in touch with Duncan Sinclair, the commissioner, and say, look, you're making a big mistake, closing Western Memorial Hospital. I'd really like an opportunity to come and sit down and talk to you and explain to you why it is a mistake and why it's so important. And he got the meeting and went to Toronto, spent over an hour sitting down talking to Dr. Sinclair, explaining the rationale for, and what we did, what it meant to the community and the role it played. I think during that time, Dr. Sinclair's office had these stacks of mail piled up on the desks around his office. And he mentioned to Dr. Ginsberg, he said, hey, look all these letters I got from all over Ontario, people wanting to tell me why it's so important to keep their community hospitals. But he said, you know something? He said, see that stack of letters, hundreds of letters? He said, I bet 90% of those letters are from residents of West Niagara intent on saving West Niagara Memorial Hospital. So those things made a difference, and they noticed and paid attention to that.
Cumulative effect.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Now you called Dr. Ginsberg an internist.
Yeah.
Was that you showing your longevity, or was he an internist at that time?
Oh, he was, yeah. He
Okay.
came here in the, I think it was in the early 80s as our internal medicine consultant. And he was based at the hospital and fulfilled that role for the next 30
Oh, internal medicine. I thought you meant an intern, like a
Oh, no,
student.
no.
I thought, well, gee, I thought he was.
No, an internal medicine consultant.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Difference of terminology.
Yeah.
yes. So certainly the rally was a jumping off point, and I can't tell you how many times over the years it's been referred to. It's probably one of the more historic events the whole West End's ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
It's certainly in my 27 years here.
Oh, yeah, that was very memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we touched on technology
Yep.
and some of the changes, and last Thursday, HHS formally rolled out the new CAT scan that's been installed and is now in service and operating at the site.
Yeah.
Maybe you could just touch on the uniqueness and what a great feature that is to have service at the.
It absolutely is, and we've been trying to get a CAT scanner for the last 6 or 7 years. Up until now, if we have patients that needed a CAT scan, we had to put them in an ambulance, send them into Hamilton to the General Juravinsky usually, have the procedure.
And a nurse
done.
had to go with them, I believe.
If they were sick enough, a nurse had to accompany them. So that took a nurse out of our emergency department. Sometimes there were 2 or 3 nurses gone on 2 or 3 calls, and they were gone for maybe 4 hours at a time. So it was a really impactful thing on staffing our emergency department. Plus the delay in making a diagnosis and deciding on treatment. Occasionally, these people had their CAT scan and came back, and then we found, hey, we got to transfer them back into the general for more specialized care. So it was a major factor, I think, in causing delays and treatment and that sort of thing. So we started pushing to get a CAT scan back around the time we actually amalgamated with HHS in 2014.
They mentioned that, yeah.
And a lot of work was done on it. It was one of the primary things that HHS agreed to when we amalgamated with them in 2014. So we made a lot of progress, but it was complicated by the fact we needed space. It's not, you just can't open a room and put a CAT scanner in there. It has to be a very specialized area. So it took a long time to do that. HHS, I must say to their credit, worked really hard to get a CAT scanner here.
And it's not just as explained Thursday. It's not just a matter of wanting it. You have to get it approved
Yep.
through the ministry first.
Exactly.
They allow you to have one
Yep.
because of the cost, not only of the unit, which is raised locally,
Yep.
but the operation of it, which
Yep.
is paid through the province. You have to justify it. There's various reports and
Oh,
things
yeah.
that are shown over, over years to
Yep. Yep.
show you've got the traffic to justify it.
Yeah, it takes years to get approval to install a CAT scanner. You just can't go out and buy one and put it in, because a lot of the expense then is operating it and getting the staff who are specialized in using
Yep.
that kind of equipment.
Exactly.
So it took quite a while, and then trying to find the space, because West Lincoln has so little. There's no empty space. I mean, you're looking for a broom closet where you can put a small office or something like that. It's that bad. So finally, we were able to find a space, get it developed, and as a result of that, we now have a.
And it's been almost the whole year to get that space prepared.
I think they've been working on it for at least a year, and the planning for it probably another couple of years prior to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
So
huge.
it's great that it's up and running, and they did mention it's fully transferable to the new
Yeah.
facility. And
That's one of the benefits of that kind of equipment. It is transferable, so it'll go into the new hospital. It's an amazing piece of equipment.
great. Would you say? Well, is there a piece of equipment or a development that you've seen in your career that you think you could point a finger at and say that's probably the most useful or important development of technology I've seen? I mean,
Well, that would certainly qualify as one of the most important, I would say. But in all areas of medicine now, the equipment that's being used is getting so sophisticated. Some years ago, we had to replace our anesthetic machines, and the life of an anesthetic machine is probably no more than 10 years old. But over that period of time, the cost of the new equipment probably went up 10 times, actually.
mm,
And the new equipment is very computerized, very sophisticated, and very expensive. So we're lucky. We've had such wonderful support from the West Lincoln Royal Hospital Foundation, the West Lincoln Memorial Auxiliary, incredible group of people.
yeah,
And
a lot of work.
because that we wouldn't have it otherwise, because we have to raise funds for all this equipment.
Everything on the interior, yeah.
Yeah, the government doesn't supply any of that. You have to find the money for it yourself. So we've been lucky that we've had groups like that have been really supportive.
Yeah. And just on that, before we move on, you mentioned about the rally in '97 and fundraising and the different groups and the different service clubs and organizations that run all kinds of
Yeah,
fundraisers.
absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe you could just touch on the community support for the facility in general.
Yep. So the community support is crucial. Like I said, without the community support, we wouldn't have any of the new equipment. With the new build now, the community is responsible for 10% of the cost of the building itself, and the government doesn't pay for anything that goes into the building. That's the community's responsibility 100%. So that's why it's so critical to get that support, and we're so fortunate to have tremendous support from school groups, service clubs, and the foundation auxiliary I mentioned. It's amazing.
Yeah, great. We were talking a bit about the history and the different aspects of technology, and I know that Martha Davidson covered the educational component
Yep.
in the magazine too. But that's something that you would have seen evolve during your years too, which was also a key reason for it. The model of sustainability for the hospital was sold to the provincial government, was the educational aspect. Maybe you could just explain a little bit about how that works and
Yeah.
why it is so important.
Sure.
And it's also gone a long way to help solving the local doctor situation
sure
by
has.
people wanting to
It
stay.
certainly has, yeah. So we've been affiliated as a teaching hospital with McMaster University. I think right from the time the University Medical School started back in the 70s, and almost all of our physicians have been on staff at the medical school and taught in various capacities. The area that we were most prominent in was in family medicine, and just about all the family medicine physicians in the West Niagara area were part of that. So typically, we all had students who came through various phases of their medical training, and then a lot of them came back as medical residents, worked in the hospital, worked in the different clinics in town. So that was important, but also the advantage to that was we became one of the main teaching. We were the second biggest teaching unit in all of Niagara, here at West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, and a lot of the people who trained here went throughout the province and worked in similar kind of hospitals, whether it was in places like Collingwood or Orillia or whatever. I've met a bunch of these students in recent years who attribute the decisions they made to the experience they had here in West Lincoln. So that was a major component and played a big part in our getting the approval, I think, as well, the fact that we played such an important part in education.
A lot of intangibles.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. A lot of people don't realize that. And most of the physicians actually that came to the West Niagara area came out of that program. They came here as trainees, liked the lifestyle, liked the kind of work, and decided to stay. So we were very fortunate. We were one of the few places in the province that never had difficulty attracting physicians.
We were very lucky.
Yeah, very lucky indeed.
So I remember covering those stories and all the packages that places were having to offer just to get people to come for interviews, and then the job fairs and the things that they were hosting on regional scales just to try to get people to come by and say, would you even consider coming here? And we were embarrassed by our riches of human resource.
And not only that, but we attracted the best of the best, right? So we were really lucky.
Yeah. So the new build is evolving.
Yep.
You must be very excited to see that.
Oh yeah, I'm thrilled. It's so exciting. It's probably the biggest thing that's happened in West Niagara in many, many years.
I can't imagine anything bigger, honestly.
Back not too many years ago, we had the Y, and that was really exciting to get that into West Niagara. It's been a huge benefit to our community. But this is really absolutely huge. And
what do you think would be other than just the fact it will continue to exist as an entity, is there anything else about having the facility there and built for the future that, will change people's outlook at all on just having it there?
Well, I've always felt that West Lincoln Memorial Hospital was a model community hospital. It was one of the main reasons I came and stayed in this area, because I liked the style of practice that you could do here. I liked the way that it was organized. It was family medicine centered. All the family doctors were on staff. They looked after their patients in their office while they're in hospital, after they went home. So there was that continuity of care, which you don't see in too many places. A lot of them did obstetrics. A lot of them did palliative care, assisted surgery, all that sort of thing. And I think a really unique model of healthcare. So this enables us to carry on, but it enables us to carry on with a facility that's state of the art. It's an incredible facility. I think it's one that'll serve our community for the next maybe 100 years.
I'd like to hope so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think so. I think it's.
Well, there's no doubt that with the birth, the obstetrics being such a popular feature for so long there, with people coming from all over the place, and I think it is because of just all levels of care tends to take on a more family, small town type of atmosphere.
Yeah.
And
Again,
it permeates everything.
Yeah, it was a unique form of obstetrical maternity care as well. A combination of family physicians who did obstetrics, a really outstanding group of midwives. We were one of the first hospitals in Ontario to have midwives. The program started, I think, around 1994. McMaster was one of the two hospitals that actually trained midwives. As soon as the program started, we had midwives here. and backed up by our obstetrical
Yeah.
consultants. So it's really an ideal program, absolutely.
Certainly would like to see them come back once they
Oh,
get
yeah.
things organized and
Absolutely.
rebooted.
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to mention, Gary, that we haven't covered? Or
No, I think really I'm so impressed with the people in West Niagara. I mean, this is an incredible place to live. And the people are so passionate about their hospital, about healthcare, and I've been so impressed down through the years about the way they've responded every time there was a need. It's really
there's never been any complacency developed there.
absolutely not.
Because every time every time a call went out, boy,
Yeah.
people showed up.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
no
yeah,
hesitation.
Yeah, the passion of the people in our communities is just absolutely amazing.
It is. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate you
You're
coming in.
welcome. My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in or clicking or whatever it is people do with podcasts these days. Tonight's game 1 of the Stanley Cup. For obvious reasons, I think you'll see that I'm not cheering for Tampa Bay. Thanks, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.